Georgia is one of the few places on Earth where the past never vanished. It stayed exactly where people left it, in rock walls, in buried tunnels, in villages built to survive more than 1,000 years. This is a country shaped by necessity, not myth. A place where every fortress, every cave, every monastery had a purpose. Stay alive when the world outside didn't care if you did. What remains today is not a story about ruins. It's a record of how far people were willing to go to protect their homes, their faith, and their identity. This is Georgia, and these are the places that refused to disappear. Uplisiki. Somewhere in the hills east of where dictators were born lies something far older than any single man's legacy. Uplistsiki. The name means Fortress of the Lord, but that came later after the stone had already spoken for 1,000 years. Picture this. While Rome was learning to build with wood, Georgian hands were hollowing out an entire city from living rock. Not rooms, not shelters, a civilization complete with boulevards carved from sandstone, wine cellars sunk into floors, reception halls held up by columns that were never added but never removed because they were always there, waiting inside the cliff to be revealed. Walk through Queen Tamar's hall, touch the stone pylons. They've held the weight of kings and the silence of centuries. "185 wine jars line the cellars, buried deep where temperature never shifts." These weren't survivors hiding in caves. These were people who understood that the most permanent architecture is the kind you don't build, you uncover. And they thought of everything. A tunnel, almost invisible, cuts through the rock and drops to the river below. Emergency water, escape route, insurance against siege. For 3,000 years, this city breathed pagan temple, Christian basilica, Silk Road trading post, Mongol target. In 1957, Soviet archaeologists brushed away centuries of sand and found it all still there, waiting. Stone has patience that empires don't. Vardzia. But caves weren't the only answer. The cliff face of Erusheti Mountain looks solid, impenetrable, eternal. until you see the windows. Vadzia, a name born from a child's cry, "I'm here, uncle." When young Tamar got lost in the tunnels, her father was carving. But this was no child's game. This was survival made architecture. "1,200 years ago, Georgia's first female ruler crowned not queen, but king, because the word for monarch had no feminine form. Made a choice that would echo through stone's 6,000 rooms, 13 levels deep into the mountain, throne room beside chapel, beside bakery, beside pharmacy, beside wine cellar, all connected by 80 meters of tunnels that twist through darkness and like the corridors of memory itself. From the outside, nothing, a mountain. From the inside, a kingdom where 2,000 monks could vanish when the Mongols came. The Church of the Dormition still glows with 12th century frescoes. One shows Tamar herself, one of only 3 portraits in all of Georgia. Even in paint, her eyes hold the weight of impossible decisions. But stone, like ice, has a voice. In 1283, the earth shook. The mountain's face shattered and fell. Two-thirds of Vadzia collapsed in a single afternoon. What was meant to be invisible became Georgia's most dramatic wound, a city turned inside out, its secret chambers exposed to every passing century. Persian armies found it in 1551. Monks died. Silence moved in. For generations, Vadzia stood empty until 7 monks returned. Today they guard what remains, 600 caves, 1 extraordinary church, and the ghost of a warrior queen who believed that the safest place to hide a kingdom was inside the earth itself. David Gareja. In the desert, where rain is a rumor and stone turns the color of rust and gold and ash, a monk once chose to be alone with God. The year was 500. David Garejeli walked from Mesopotamia with 12 brothers, and while they scattered to fertile valleys, he turned toward emptiness. David Gareja. 21 monasteries scattered across rainbow-striped cliffs. 5,000 cells carved into rock that glows like fire at dawn. Isolation wasn't punishment here. It was the point. By the 9th century, Georgian kings poured wealth into this barren place. Frescoes bloomed on cave walls, monks and monarchs and angels painted 70 meters above the valley floor. colors so vivid they could make Byzantium jealous. Beauty in the desert, art where nothing should survive. But beauty makes you a target. Soviet soldiers used these thousand-year-old paintings for firing practice. You can still see the bullet holes scars on the faces of saints who survived empires but not ideology. Today, an invisible line cuts through David Goreha, Georgia on one side, Azerbaijan on the other. Border guards patrol where hermits once prayed in silence. Since 2019, access to the monastery with the most spectacular frescoes has been restricted. Politics where there should only be peace. Yet the Rainbow Mountains remain geological layers painted in impossible colors, stripes of time made visible. Gegeti Trinity Church. (2,170 meters above sea level, beneath a 5,000-meter glacier, where clouds become neighbors and the air cuts like crystal. Gegeti Trinity Church wasn't built for pilgrims. It was built as a vault. 14th century Georgia, crushed between Mongol hordes and Persian armies, needed a place beyond reach. So they built upward, so high that reaching it felt like divine intervention, which was exactly the point. When enemies approached, monks carried Georgia's soul up this mountain. St. Nino's cross, bound with her own hair, royal treasures, illuminated manuscripts, everything that mattered lifted above the violence below. For 600 years, hiking was the only way up. That wasn't an inconvenience, that was the defense. Georgian legend says Amirani, their Prometheus, was chained 4,000 meters up Mount Kazbek for giving fire to humanity. Orthodox monks lived in his cave once, dwelling with a Titan's ghost. They claimed to guard Abraham's tent, Christ's manger. Truth or myth, it doesn't matter. Some mountains are holy simply because they make you feel small enough to believe again. Gelati Monastery. In 1106, a king called David the Builder decided Georgia needed more than swords. It needed mines. Gelati Monastery rose in the forest, part monastery, part university, part declaration of ambition. While Europe argued whether the earth was round, Georgian monks taught astronomy in these halls. Philosophers debated. Artists perfected mosaics that still gleam 900 years later, gold leaf catching light that's crossed centuries to reach your eyes. This was Georgia's Renaissance, 300 years before Italy's. A place where science and faith weren't enemies but partners, where celestial mechanics and theology shared the same classroom. King David wanted Georgia to rival Constantinople, to challenge Baghdad. For a brief, brilliant moment, it did. When David died in 1125, he made one final request: bury me under the entrance, not in a grand tomb, not in a place of honor, under the threshold. Every pilgrim who enters Galati walks over his grave. The greatest king in Georgian history wanted worshippers to trample him on their way to God, humility carved into stone. Mtskheta. Where two rivers meet the Mtkvari and Aragvi, a nation chose its soul. Mtskheta, 3,000 years of continuous life. Once the capital of the Kingdom of Iberia, now the cradle where Georgia became Christian. 4th century, a woman named Nino walked from Cappadocia carrying a cross made of grapevines bound with her own hair. She planted it on a hilltop. Georgia converted in 337 AD, the second nation ever to make Christianity its state religion. "200 years later, Javari Monastery rose around that spot. The cross is still there, encased in octagonal stone, where prayers have been offered for 14 centuries. St. Nino builds the first church from that tree's wood today, Svetitskovely Cathedral. The Cathedral of the Living Pillar stands where the cedar once grew. Beneath a 17th century canopy lies Sidonia's grave. With Christ's robe still buried beneath the Christians, this is the second holiest site on earth after Jerusalem. Sacred ground, where myth and faith and history tangle like the roots of an ancient tree. Alaverdi Cathedral. In Georgia's wine heartland, where vineyards have produced wine for 8,000 years, another monk planted more than just vines. The 6th century, Joseph Alaverdelli chose the Alazani River Valley, surrounded by endless rows of grapes. The cathedral that rose here in 1011 reaches 50 meters into the sky, the second tallest religious building in Georgia. But what makes Alaverdi unique isn't its height, it's what lies underground. In 2006, monks restored the original 11th century wine cellar. Today, they still make wine the ancient way in Kvevri, clay vessels buried in the earth. Alaverdi is the only functioning cathedral in the world where monks produce sacramental wine using methods unchanged for a millennium. Every September, Georgians celebrate Alaverdoba, a festival where wine, faith, and harvest converge. It's been happening here for 1,000 years. The air fills with the scent of fermenting grapes. Prayers rise alongside steam from clay vessels, and for one day, heaven and earth taste the same. Ushguli, 2,200 meters above the sea, Europe's highest permanently inhabited village, where families lived in fortresses for 1,000 years. Ushguli, where the Svan people, an ethnic group with their own unwritten language, learned to build vertically. Each family had a tower, 3 to 5 stories of solid stone. Ground floor for livestock, upper floors for grain and living, top floor for defense, with embrasures to rain stones on enemies below. When invaders came, and they always came, Persians and Mongols and Turks and Russians, entire villages retreated inside their towers and waited weeks, months, however long it took. The towers weren't just for foreign enemies. Svan blood feuds were legendary. Families barricaded themselves for months, while disputes were settled stone against stone. The village of Chajashi preserves 200 of these towers. UNESCO called it an exceptional example of mountain scenery with medieval-type villages. Nowhere else on Earth looks like this, stone fingers pointing at heaven, crowned by Mount Shkara at 5,201 meters, the roof of Georgia. Legend says Queen Tamar had residences here. Some believe she's even buried in Ushguli, though no one knows where some secrets stay in the mountains. Narikala Fortress. Before the capital had a name, this fortress stood guard. Fourth century, Narikala, the impregnable fortress. The Persians may have built it. The Georgians, Arabs, and Mongols all fought for it. For 1,600 years, whoever controlled this hill controlled Tbilisi. The walls saw Byzantine armies, Arab caliphates, Mongol hordes, Ottoman sieges, and they're still standing. In 1827, an earthquake finally cracked what armies couldn't break. Parts of Narikala collapsed, but enough survived to remind modern Tbilisi of its past. Ananuri Fortress, the Georgian military highway, the only road connecting Georgia to Russia through the Caucasus Mountains. And guarding it at a strategic bend in the Aragvi River stands Ananuri. This isn't just a fortress. It's a complex. Defensive walls, watchtowers, and 2 churches, including the Church of the Assumption, with stone carvings that survived 400 years of wars. Medieval dukes of Aragvi ruled from here, controlling trade caravans, defending against northern invaders, collecting tolls from merchants, carrying silk from China to Europe. Today, the Zhinvali Reservoir laps at its walls built by the Soviets in 1985. But Ananuri still stands, watching the same road it's guarded for 500 years. The water mirrors the fortress perfectly, doubling its reflection as if even the reservoir knows this place deserves to be remembered twice. Rabati Castle, southern Georgia. A fortress called Lomcia once guarded trade routes to Armenia and Turkey. Over centuries, it grew, fell, rebuilt, each ruler adding their own layer. Georgians built churches, Ottomans added mosques, Jewish merchants established synagogues. By the time you reach Rabati today, you're looking at 1,000 years of architectural evolution compressed into one fortress. In 2012, Georgia launched a massive reconstruction. Critics said it was too modern, too polished. But the result? A functioning cultural center where a church, mosque, and synagogue stand side by side, something rare anywhere in the world. You can get married here, visit museums, stay in the hotel, all within medieval walls that remember when empires fought for this exact piece of ground. History preserved, history rebuilt, history still breathing. Shatili. On the border with Chechnya, 1,400 meters up a road that closes 6 months a year, sits a village that became a fortress. Shatili. 60 stone towers that don't just stand side by side, they connect internal passages. Staircases carved into rock, terraces on flat roofs. From above, it looks like one massive castle. From inside, it's a labyrinth where entire families could vanish when armies came down from the north. The Khevsurs held this place for centuries. Katsky Pillar, 40 meters of limestone rising from fields like a finger pointing at God. 2,000 years ago, pagans worshipped a fertility god atop this pillar. In the 6th century, Christian monks replaced pagan rites with something more extreme: complete isolation. They were called stylites monks who lived on pillars. On Katsky, hermits carved a church, cells, even a wine cellar on a summit the size of a tennis court, 40 meters in the air. For centuries, no one could reach it. In 1944, Soviet mountaineers finally climbed up. They found ruins, hermit cells, the 600-year-old bones of the last monk who lived there. If this journey moved you, if it stirred something you thought you'd lost, then carry it forward. Share this story, because the world still holds wonders we've never heard of, and Georgia will always be one of them.